chamar. Deixa eu ver se eu consigo me organizar aqui. Acho que sim. Já está no ar? Então, pessoal, estamos de volta. Vamos passar agora a palestra de abertura com a professora doutora Walkyria Montemor. O título da palestra dela é Why Critical Literacies Project Matter in the Study of Languages. Por favor, professora Walkyria. A senhora quer ficar aqui embaixo? Prefere subir? Pode ficar à vontade.
Acho que eu posso ficar aqui embaixo, né?
Tá, pode ser.
E talvez falo em inglês mesmo? Acho melhor.
Please, please.
You sure? Yeah?
Sure. Yeah.
Are you sure that I should speak in English? Yeah. Probably without the mask? Yeah. Maybe I should translanguage, right? A bit in English, a bit in Portuguese, and sometimes given explanations in Portuguese a bit, right? Just in an updated way of teaching today as well, right? Okay, thank you very much for the invitation to come and talk to teachers, okay? That is the title of my talk today with you. But first of all, I'd like to say how much I enjoyed being invited for this conference, right? I've been a teacher for decades, not going to tell you how many, right? But I started as a teacher in elementary schools, right? And I've always been interested in education, and I've always been interested in the teaching of languages in institutions, I mean informal institutions, right? It's such as elementary, secondary schools, and in universities as well, right? So it is a great pleasure for me to talk to those that have affinity with my course of life, okay? So also I feel very much thankful for talking to the federal schools, right, and federal institutes. I really appreciate the value of such institutes. You should know that, how important these institutes are. For me, they are really an example of education in Brazil. I myself had the privilege of, how do I say that, postgraduate or graduate or formar doctor student, okay, that teaches at a federal institute nowadays. His name is Fernando Pardo. He teaches at the unit in São Paulo called Pirituba. And he's really great, and I'm very, very glad that he decided to do his carreira profissional in a federal institute, right? So I'm already translanguaging because sometimes it is faster for me to think, right? I've met you before, I think, haven't you? Yes? You, yeah. Yes. Ah, yeah, you're Danielle, and I have a lot of contact with you at USP then. Okay, that's why I said she's familiar to me, huh? Okay. So this is the research that I've been doing for quite a long time. I can say decades again, right? since Freudian times. So you can really imagine that this means decades, right? And let me tell you, hey. Okay, this is what I'm going to follow today. I usually do not follow a linear procedure. That's why I show you just this way. So this is where I begin. I'm going to tell you a bit about the Brazilian education in the last few years. And there is a question of myself here, what's going on there? I mean, what's going on in Brazil? What's happening, okay? And then I'm going to follow to critical and digital literacies as a critical education project, because this is what I've been really investing on, believing that we in Brazil need more critical education, critical literacies, right? Then, of course, that this idea here is embedded by a view of language and culture, a view of citizen and a view of society, okay? And then I'm going to critical education, Freudian thoughts, critique, epistemologies, and meaning making. So this is the course I'll follow during my talk. Is that okay for you? Can you all follow me well? Do you think I should speak, you know, not so loud, probably, because I know that I speak loud? Is that okay? Or speak slower, or fine? Fine for everyone? Let me know if you do not follow, or some concept, okay, that I may make use here. Maybe you'd like to know a little more. I love being interrupted. This is, I like to talk as in a dialogue, right? So you can interrupt me any time, okay? So, I really begin, you know, telling you about a concept that has been developed by Cope and Calantzis, but I have adapted it in 2007 and again in 2022. Okay, I think this makes a lot of sense to me when they started questioning the idea of education in the world, right? And of course that I questioned education here in Brazil by that time. So they show us that there are 3 different fields, okay, that we should pay attention related to education. So first is the working field, right? So our jobs, our works, what do we do for a living? Then our public and civic lives, I mean, what we do every day as citizens, for example, and our personal lives. Public lives is our interaction with the exterior, right? With our, what happens beyond the walls of our houses, right? But then our personal lives as well matter a lot in this kind of research, okay? So, but as you see, I emphasize the one in blue, that is public life and civic lives, okay, understanding that this is important for us to rethink because it has a lot of influence on our personal lives as well, right? Makes sense to you? You does? You sure? Okay, all right. So, of course, that when I speak of our public lives, I could not deny the great impact that we had with the COVID phenomenon, right? So how much we suffered, I was exactly talking to Samuel and Vilma, that it seems that my memory has lost a lot, you know, to everything, of everything that happened before the pandemic. And I remember much more from the pandemic on, you know, and after, right? So this was a really sad moment, but we had a chance to rethink many issues of our lives and of our public lives, right? So we understood that many things had been swept under the carpet or under the rug, right? Mainly education. Education, by that time, felt like that. So I had a chance, okay, during this period to participate in a research called Projeto Tecnologias Digitais, Sociedade e Cultura, sob a perspectiva dos letramentos, and with the participation of PUC Campinas, USP, and Unicamp from 2019 and 2022, okay? Exactly during the pandemic, right? And I'd like to share with you, okay, this experience that I had, and I want to know whether you felt the same, okay, here, right? Let me know later, okay? So, what are some of the insecurities about working online and remotely that many teachers pointed out, right? So first, the knowledge of many teachers about the use of computers and cell phones and internet was insufficient to translate what teaching should be like during the pandemic. You know, as if they were pegos de calça curta, you know, that's how they felt, right? So I should teach English, I know how to teach English, but remotely, online, how do I make my students interested, right? So also they felt little comfort or discomfort with distance learning, yeah? And how to evaluate students' reading, how they think, imagine, and have creativity, how to evaluate this was also something they showed. And students behaving in the face of digital with the spirit of analogic technology. I can take the test in a group, for example, so with advantages and disadvantages, right? Although they could do something, you know, collectively, they didn't know how to, okay? And sometimes they took advantage of this collective in their own favor, right? Okay, okay so far? So, more insecurities about that. Students having to share the time of cell phone, computer use with other family members. Very common in São Paulo. You're going to think that São Paulo is different. You're going to see it's not different at all, right? In some families, 4, 5 people, mother, father, and kids, all working online with one cell phone or 2 cell phones to share with everyone, right? And also the signal of the internet was not so good, right, to them. So, can you imagine how difficult that was? So, parents not feeling confident, signing documents so their children wouldn't return to the classroom. They had to sign students, some families wanted the kids to go back to classrooms. Some parents didn't want to, but they were forced, according to the law, they were forced to sign documents for that. So, also, faced with insecurity about remote teaching, the content has been set aside or overvalued. So, as they didn't know what to do, they focused on the content, okay? To be, to do, does, for example. The content was important, or either overvalued or they set aside, okay? And in the face of the difficulty with the new, the conventional is prioritized in this case, right? So the content was prioritized to many teachers. Do you feel familiar with some of these statements? You do? Yeah? You have to send me these statements later from our own research, okay? So what were some of the challenges faced by the teachers? Authorized partial return of students in classrooms, okay? When the government decided that students should go back to but not completely. Half of the students, half of the group, half in halves, okay? So that is, half the class went to school on such days, the other half on the other days, in the form of a rotation. Then, most of the teachers had to work many extra hours to prepare exercises or extra classes for the paper, for the proper halves of the class, to maintain their activities on the days they stayed at home. Just, okay? Uma metade fica em casa, então você tem que mandar as atividades. A outra metade que vem, você atende. Então, isso significou trabalho dobrado. They had double of the work. And a certain number of schools, through their direction, coordination, or teaching secretariats, managed to either strengthen or implement a digital advisory structure for teachers and students. A certain number, right, of teachers managed to do this, but not all of them. And I had this mix in that project I mentioned, that there were coordinators that could do this, and some coordinators could not do anything like this. So it was a challenge to us in the project as well, right? So what my question has been is, conflicted years in political terms, right? Academic, pandemic, in elementary, secondary, university as well. And what view of society, how do I interpret all the conflicts together, right? So that was important. And I'd like to highlight this idea that this is the one that I've been emphasizing for a long, long time. When we decide to teach according to a certain methodology, we are working on a view of science, of society, okay, and science as well. So that is important, right? I'm going to explain this better just within a few seconds, okay? So, these were some of the questionings, okay, and some of the conflicts we had, such as, how do I handle with online classes? Students don't want to go back to classes anymore. Many students found out that staying home was way better for them. And some students didn't want to go back to schools because they didn't find any reason for that. Why do I have to go to school? Schools don't make sense to me anymore. Now with the pandemic, I see that, right? So also we had in society this huge conflict, this binarism between the we and them, you know? The two different political parties, two different very strong ideologies, right? And this having a great social divide, right? And computers, cell phones, internet, masks, you know, all of these attributes made many people feel very confused, depressed, and that's a very important moment for us to rethink things, right? So, my questions then, after all the confusions and all of these reasonings, okay, are languages. In this case, I refer to foreign language, to Libras, and also to Portuguese. Portuguese, for me, is also a foreign language, right? It's foreign language in different regions, right? So, are languages going to be taken as an appendix in the curriculum, or are they going to be worked within their educational potential? Agora eu falo pouquinho em português para explicar isso melhor, essa base aí do meu raciocínio. Eu acho que durante muitas décadas, nós, como professores de línguas estrangeiras, trabalhamos a língua estrangeira como se fosse um apêndice, como se ela não tivesse uma função educacional dentro de um currículo, né? Tenho escrito isso há décadas. Se alguém tiver contribuições em relação a isso, ou protestos em relação a isso, também fiquem à vontade. Mas eu acho que a língua estrangeira nunca, ou é de um tempo para cá, que vem sendo trabalhada no seu potencial educacional. Língua estrangeira é a instância perfeita para se entender o outro, para mim, sabe? Eu vejo que tem outros que falam outras línguas, mesmo que seja a língua materna, mas falam outras línguas maternas para essas pessoas também. Também temos as pessoas que precisam de Libras, e é uma outra língua também. Por que as crianças não podem começar a aprender Libras na escola desde cedo? Não é? Então, essa compreensão do outro contribui muito no que se refere à tolerância relativa ao outro que é diferente, sabe? Então, esse é um papel fundamental das línguas estrangeiras e que muitas vezes não tem a atenção devida. That's why I say that it's not an appendix in the curriculum. It is very important for educational reasons. My voice is not good enough? You're trying to... Oh, okay. Okay, all right. Thank you. Right. So, do you follow this? How do you feel about it? You can answer in Portuguese, in English, but languages that I know, not the ones that I don't know, okay? That is Portuguese e English only. O que vocês acham disso? Faz sentido? Que muitas vezes a gente trabalhou, é só o to be que ele não sabe, não é? Não necessariamente, né? Ah. Uma das aquelas formas, antigas, tradicionais de ensino era essa. Então, é como se fosse um terreno que a língua estrangeira não pertencesse, não caminhasse. Exatamente. Ela é sempre vista como estrangeira, né? É estrangeira. Então, a gente tem que saber a língua como uma função. Nos permita comunicar e acabou. Então, eu acredito que esse terreno, esse campo, a língua inglesa, a língua espanhola, outras línguas que a gente tem na escola, estão começando a se apropriar de um deles mais para cá. Outras pessoas já despertavam para isso enquanto a sua pesquisa, chamando a atenção para isso, mas, infelizmente, até isso acaba sendo, pelos nossos currículos, pelas escolhas de como...
I'm sorry, we have to use the microphone because we are transmitting.
Okay, let me start again. Então, let me switch to Portuguese. A pergunta que eu estava fazendo à professora Walkyria era, na verdade, uma colocação, né, que a gente pode, e durante a palestra falando mais, é que até as metodologias que a gente, como professor, ia aprendendo na universidade, eram muito... Uma delas, né, não era apenas, era da gramática, tradução, é como se a língua fosse apenas um elemento para a comunicação. Então, depois que a gente aprende a função que ela exerce para a comunicação, acabou o propósito daquele ensino. Seria essa forma mais tradicional. E esse campo de que a língua estrangeira está permeando o currículo, nesse potencial educacional, de outros diálogos, outras possibilidades, é algo que as pessoas estão se apropriando mais recentemente. E talvez na sua pesquisa e no seu trabalho aqui na palestra possa até falar um pouquinho mais à frente como que a senhora tem visto isso, essa mudança, essa perspectiva de como era e como está mais recentemente. Mas eu acho que a gente, como professor, não pode esquecer dessas coisas. Eu tive em minha sala de aula, durante o período da pandemia, de aulas online, aluno surdo na aula de língua inglesa no contexto remoto. Então, eu tinha um intérprete de Libras, era 3 línguas, gente, na sala remota. Era português, Libras e inglês, só para vocês terem ideia.
Eu sou totalmente favorável à ideia de que as crianças devem começar na escola aprendendo línguas. Mas, quando eu falo línguas, para mim pode ser Libras, para mim toda criança devia aprender Libras e levar isso para a vida inteira, né? E deveria, assim, as línguas estrangeiras deveriam, os primeiros anos do aprendizado de línguas dos jovens, deveria ser entendendo assim, não é uma aula de inglês, é uma aula de línguas, é uma educação linguística, para ele saber quem são esses outros que falam essas outras línguas e que constroem culturas diferentes. Então, para mim, os jovens aprenderiam também inglês, o professor deveria saber um pouquinho de francês, um pouquinho de espanhol, para falar com ela, algumas pessoas falam desse jeito, porque é um outro local, a língua se formou diferente. É uma educação linguística, percebe? É isso que eu tenho chamado de educação linguística, né? Então, e por que não Libras junto? Por que não as línguas africanas, para eles entenderem os movimentos quilombolas, você entende? Que isso é tão presente, isso é tão próximo dos nossos alunos, gente. E isso é ignorado. Então, para mim, essa é a educação linguística. Então, eu continuo persistindo nessa ideia, in this proposal, right? Look at this. So, for me, this is a view of society, just like Lyotard's assertion says that to understand the nature of knowledge in our times, one must be able to understand how society operates and why, okay? So, when I teach language, any language, I'm building up, I'm constructing a view of society. Right? What I mean by this, Walkyria, what did you do? Okay, wait. Okay. What I mean is, what concepts or views of society, citizens, shape us, right? We are shaped by views of society. So my generation was shaped by normativity. They wanted us to be in a pattern, to belong to a excluded, right? So, no, this is no. We should work on the idea of inclusion, not exclusion, right? Because this is what normativity leads us to, right? So, understanding this is a very important issue. So, nowadays, we have two different societies working together or shaping us. One is the written language society, the century-old society we've lived, because we all learn how to read and how to write, okay? And when we learn how to read, how to write, we operate on this is accepted, this is not accepted. That's when we are all shaped by rules and norms, right? However, fortunately, we now have a digital society together. This one has not excluded the written society, right? But it has included, and this is the reason why nowadays we're questioning, what will another education project be like? How do I work? Is it going to be another brick in the wall? Okay, hope not, right? We are not going to build up another proposal, educational proposal, to be one more brick in the wall, right? So just for you to understand, I'm not going to take long on this issue here, but see, written language society is the one that belongs to the modernist enlightenment project of society that uses simplified language, meanings are standardized. You probably remember that we learned how to construct meanings. So the teachers would say, no, this is accepted, this is not accepted, right? In reading classes, in literature, in whatever needed interpretation. Agreements, official versions of standard languages, that's why they became official, right? Then nobody could sue me, não podiam me processar se eu desse uma nota para o aluno falando está errado, porque de acordo com a gramática é assim, então essa é a lei, né? So, also, meanings and multimodalities are set apart, privilege of the written word. So multimodalities were not worked in written language society. Concordam? Não se trabalhava muito a multimodalidade. Então, quando a gente começa a falar de multimodalidade, parecia ser uma coisa nova. E não tem nada de novo na multimodalidade, que sempre existiu. Só que agora nós estamos dando visibilidade a ela. Meu tom de voz tem multimodalidade, né? Meu tom de voz, seja lá o que for, né? Enfim, não preciso nem falar muito, mas se quiserem, depois eu volto a falar um pouco mais. Walkyria, the privilege of the mind. And this is what made the typographic mind. Our minds looked like a typography, following line by line, font by font, word by word, page by page. You see, this is the typography mode, right? Or a typographic mind. So, even, let's say, even Gruzinski, that studied the history of Mexico and Latin America, calls our attention to the fact that the conquest of America was not just a military and religious enterprise. Alphabetical writing provided a decisive and essential weapon for the colonizers. How do you shape people? By teaching them how to read and write. Ok? Parece escandaloso eu falar isso, mas o projeto da escrita, que é absolutamente importante na humanidade, foi um projeto civilizatório, né? Ao mesmo tempo, foi um projeto que, o outro lado dele é que ele foi um projeto que moldou pessoas de acordo com normatividades, padrões, né? Então, vamos deixar de fazer isso? Não, mas vamos talvez dizer isso para os nossos alunos. Ó, escrever é importante, ler é importante, mas ali está implícito um modelo de sociedade. A gente vai, em algumas ocasiões, vamos seguir estes, em outras ocasiões, vamos seguir outros modelos. Vamos começar a falar de pluralized world, pluriversalities and not universalities, right? So, he says also, alphabetical writing was essential to create and maintain links between Spain and the New World. And without writing, it would be impossible to establish this new form of colonial power. So now that we've been discussing coloniality and decoloniality so often, we have to understand that the learning, the dissemination of learning how to read and how to write was also part of a coloniality project, okay, in the West. Mm-hmm. So, how are the digital societies going to contribute to opening up, okay, this perspective? See, you're going to see that it's going to bring back the plurality of languages and cultures, right? So languages and cultures have always been plural, but they were put into shapes, okay, into norms, right? So see here what they contribute with. Differences, see, in meanings, diversity or diversity, divergences, okay, accessible media, multimodality, and mind-body habitat relationships. So it's not only the mind that matters, but it's the body and the habitat, the environment where ideas are built up, okay? Makes sense to you? Let me know. You do? Okay, good. So this is why we say that critical literacy really matters, because not to extinguish with normativity, standardizations, nothing like that, but to give an opportunity for breaks or for breaking up standards. Look at this. So these are some characteristics of what is critical. And I highlight here the engagement in what breaks, disrupt. This idea being skeptical or suspicious. You know, when people say, this is life, there is nothing to do about it, it's life or it's reality, or it's my family, or it's marriage is like that, you know, relationships are like that. We should suspect that this is not the only truth, right? That there are other versions, there are other possibilities. This is the idea of plurality. And also the idea seeks other discursive relationships that differ from the old, the dominant, conventionalized in social fields and linguistic markets. So this is the opening up to plurality, right? So look at this. I assume that language in the written language society has given a lot of emphasis to homogeneity, standardization, convergence, generalization, and universalization. You know, when they say this is a universal taste, for example, this is a universal value. No, this has been constructed and disseminated to be thought so, right? So these are didactic, this is what I call them. They were built up for didactic reasons, and at the same time as problematic ideas as well. So we use these views in the teaching of languages, citizens, people, and society, right? But there are other views that we can exploit and explore. And this is the reason why I would say that the idea of critical becomes so important. I bring back Freudian thoughts, okay? When he tells us about inequality, education, and freedom, okay? But bringing the voices of Tema and dos Santos that are Brazilians who have studied Freire as well, right? And do you remember when we all studied Freire, understanding the idea of the oppressed and the oppressor, right? Understanding, many people used to think that was normal, right? I was born to be the oppressed, and some people were born to be the oppressor, right? So Freire is calling our attention to this. See, cognitive elements internalized by the oppressed. People believe that this was life, right? Nothing to do about it. So he says, they believe the boss is superior and that his authority is unquestionable, right? Unquestionable. Also, social inequality is an immutable structure that has always existed. It has always existed. Why do you complain? You are just unlucky, okay? That's what people would say. Their own situation of misery is seen as fatality, right? Remember those people that had nothing to eat, okay? They'd say, oh, it's a fatality, that your misery is a fatality. There's nothing to do with society. You were born to this world, okay, to this perspective. See, and again, he's calling this idea, I mean, Tema and Santos call this cognitive way of seeing the world as cognitive colonization, or colonization of being. When we feel satisfied with our condition, you see, say, nothing to do about it. This is life, okay? This is then, when you think and see the world from categories that place him or her in the position of the oppressed. In this case, homogeneity and convergence in thinking and viewing the world, social control of the meanings, schooling and teaching as technologies of a nation. See? So we've been, during a long time, we've been contributing to this perspective without knowing, of course, right? So there is a naturalization of the vertical hierarchy. It's natural. Some are going to give orders. To give orders, sorry, yeah. Some are going to give orders and others are going to follow orders, right? It's part of the hierarchy. and of conformism in relation to various social inequalities. So, liberal premise in which the social system is not responsible for the inequalities, as we know, right? So we are born for its fatality or things like this. So again, we come to the confusion that teachers feel about during the pandemic. And again, we are going to understand how important it is to think of other epistemologies and in schools and universities. We are going to generate ways to disrupt and at the same time live and survive with hegemonic power. We are not going to finish with hegemonic power, but we are going to live with, right? And thinking otherwise, acting otherwise, and developing meaning-making, right? And this is what is called sociological imagination by many authors, right? And I bring the explanation of sociological imagination as an ability to see the context which shapes your individual decision-making as well as the decisions made by others. This is the sociological imagination that many people, we are led, okay, to follow. Okay, that's why we've been defending the idea of translanguaging. You see? Translanguaging. That's what I tried to do here as well, right? Also, critical and digital literacies. Digital literacies not meaning knowing how to deal with the equipment only. This is important, but not only. It's not only having the equipment in classrooms, but understanding the pluralities that are promoted by the digital, okay? That are brought back by the digital. And the idea of meaning making. That is, I can reinterpret. I can give different meanings, right? So, just to give this example, I bring you some ideas on this. This is how I represent what I do when I teach English, right, nowadays. It is to take the students from one condition to another condition, let's say. Let me see if I can explain that. This is a picture of women working on sugar plantation, okay? Picture, an old picture. You see the yellowish in it, right? This is a painting based on the picture. However, it's a reinterpretation. Women are not working on sugar plantation, but in another kind of plantation, so adapted to another environment, another context. And this is what I do with the ideas that are presented by foreign authors many times. When we bring to Brazil, we reinterpret, right? Okay? So, and this is also another reinterpretation, in this case by Banksy. I'm not sure if you know his works. Banksy, an artist, a street artist, but not only. Yeah. When he reinterpreted the previous painting, right, by making another painting. But according to him, the woman that was also working on a Freudian mode, she emancipated herself, and nowadays she doesn't belong only to the plantation, but she is out of the painting. She's sitting on the frame, quietly smoking, showing her freedom, right? So this is what I mean by meaning making. That is it's a work of art, but I can reinterpret even the work of art, right? So I found this very interesting, and here is the painting at a museum, on the walls of a museum, right? And here's someone looking at it, okay? just for you to have the dimensions or the dimensions of this painting and how important it is to see, okay, to work on this idea of mini-making, on the idea of disrupting, on the idea of breaking meanings and breaking rules and deconstructing the views of society. And that is the same for deconstructing my languages classes, right? That I can do something different with that. It's not only for the normativity anymore. It is, but it is not only, right? So that's why critical literacy matters nowadays, okay? So this is it. I thank you very much, and I'd like to listen to you a bit and to make comments and questions and let me know what you think about that. If you think this is crazy or not, let me know. Podemos translanguage ou português ou qualquer língua que eu saiba, que eu entenda, que são duas só. Ok. Obrigada. Gosto de ouvir comentários.
Thank you so very much. So very much. Many food for thought. So people know I love talking, so I'll let them talk first because I have so many questions.
Please make comments, questions, protest, complaints. Podem protestar também, reclamar, falar, isso não funciona, Walkyria.
No, absolutely not. I would add, and I think it's an important addition, to make sure that people understand that even though we prioritize the content, it was also reduced. And we had to reduce something that is already really small. You know, so the hours that we already have in our context of teaching, they're very reduced because we teach a foreign language. So I would add there that there was a reduction because what happened was we were at home doing what we called INEPs or activities they're, you know, done remotely. And you see students, like in our case mainly, because we work with like secondary school and students that are doing technical courses, they would spend the whole day at the institute, right? But at home, we were advised not to keep them sitting all day long in front of a computer. Mm-hmm. And so basically, let's say I had like 2 hours with each class, like a week. Mm-hmm. That would be reduced to 1 hour. Mm-hmm. And within that hour, you would have to put content and activity and whatever, because students did not, as we discussed here earlier on, like they did not have access, you know, all the time to the computers because they had to share it with their family and all. But not only that, but the time that we have to work with our content and activities and critical part of our work was reduced, and that it was even like more frustrating than it already is. So I would add there that part that was reduced, and they managed to reduce something that is already really small.
Sure, I don't blame you at all, you know. It's I understand, I completely understand. And to be honest, I've been really struggling with all these problems for decades, you know, just making people see that we are not going to follow just what people tell us to do. For example, first the linguistic policies. First of all, the planning that comes to us, right? That says that you have first to do this, second, third, for example. So it's nonsense for me, right? So that's why we have to start reinterpreting what we receive. That's what we do. Once I was asked about it, because I've been doing this for decades, and I come from the dictatorial period, and they asked me, did you used to do things like this during dictatorship at the university? Because I've been at the university since the 80s, right? In 80 something, and I did. However, having to find a way, okay, to do that. For example, by that time, I couldn't make use of the term critique and critical, right? They would say, this is stupid. You're not. There were people. There was surveillance over us, right? For some terms as well. So this is the reason why I developed the concept called interpretation expansion, interpretive expansion, right? That is, instead of saying that I was working on critique with the students, I was expanding perspectives and interpretations, right? That's what, because the two terms were not prohibited by that time, right? And I kept using them, right, for various reasons, although I also added critical and critique, okay, to my perspectives. Again, I mean, the use of the terms, right? But that's what I said as a response to that in a text that I produced with Limario, because we both worked at the same university during the same time. And that's what we used to do. So we have to learn how to reinterpret the ementas, right? And do something about it, not only follow the normativity, and if they come in a way like this, right? Do I make myself understood? You think so, when I explain that? Não é a aula de subversão, é só uma aula de como enfrentar, só um exemplo de como enfrentar, às vezes, a ideia que a gente tem, que os alunos faziam muito bem, e dava muito certo com os alunos, sabe? Essa coisa de achar um jeito que funciona com os alunos, e aí a gente fazia isso, né? Naquele tempo, e continuamos, mantivemos essa forma, e a nossa pesquisa foi sempre a respeito desse outro jeito de ver línguas e línguas estrangeiras na formação das pessoas, okay? Yeah, but I'm speaking too much.
Any other question? I would like you to say your name and the institution you come from before you ask the questions. That right? That is for everybody, okay? From now on.
Oi, meu nome é Cláudia, eu sou do Instituto Federal de São Paulo. E, assim, para mim faz muito sentido falar sobre letramento crítico dentro da aula de inglês, porque é aquela coisa, nós somos aqui professores de inglês. E aí, depois que a gente começa a ler e entender, lógico, né, o mundo como ele é, eu falo pessoalmente, né? Eu falo, então eu sou do mal, né? Porque eu sou professora de inglês, então quer dizer que, literalmente, eu advogo por um projeto neoliberal, capitalista de sociedade, porque eu ensino inglês. E o letramento crítico, as leituras sobre decolonialidade, me ajudam no sentido de dizer, não, eu posso fazer desse instrumento de trabalho um projeto educacional, como você tinha falado, né? Então, quando eu tenho uma abertura maior para dizer, eu estou fazendo um trabalho educacional, pedagógico, através da língua inglesa, que poderia ser a língua espanhola, que poderia ser a língua portuguesa, porque depois a gente cai para essa, né? Ah, mas então eu vou dar aula de espanhol. Mas o espanhol também é uma língua de colonização. Também é uma língua imperialista. Então, aí a gente vai para onde, né? Que fazer quando a gente já é professor de inglês e precisa encontrar formas, né, de ressignificar o nosso trabalho, sabendo que dentro da realidade capitalista que a gente tem é importante, sim, mas como você falou, né, a parte do content, ou a parte estrutural da linguagem, ela sempre vai existir, ela é importante, porém não é suficiente. Né? E aí, quando a gente começa a trabalhar com os alunos e conversar com os alunos sobre o porquê que a gente aprende inglês e qual é a importância disso, e dentro de um projeto maior, e se isso faz sentido para você ou não, escutá-los também, né? E numa outra perspectiva também, politicamente falando, né? Quando a gente fala de educação, quando a gente fala, por exemplo, de qual é o papel da língua inglesa numa sociedade capitalista. A gente está falando sobre lucro, a gente está falando sobre né, tudo aquilo que o capitalismo tem, mas dentro de um país polarizado que a gente vive hoje, isso pode ser interpretado como a professora é comunista, a professora não sei o quê, a professora é de esquerda, a professora é vermelha, né? E, muitas vezes, não é exatamente isso. Dar aula sobre a realidade não é partidarizar, né, as coisas. Então, é isso. Né? Às vezes, a impressão que eu tenho é que, muitas vezes, quando a gente está falando de letramento crítico, me passou a palavra agora, mas assim, é dar aulas de partidos políticos. E, na verdade, não é isso. Né? Mas a gente sabe que o nosso público, ele é plural, como você falou. A gente nunca tem como ter certeza exatamente qual é o nosso público, com quem a gente está falando. Então, quando você fala assim, dentro do período de ditadura, fazer atenção a essas brechas, aquilo que pode ser falado, como pode ser falado, isso tudo é de uma sensibilidade que a gente, da porta para fora, da porta para dentro da sala de aula, a gente sabe, né, que como acontece para o bem e para o mal. Mas eu acho que, para mim, dar aula de inglês, continuar dando aula de inglês dentro de uma perspectiva de letramento crítico é resposta para muitas coisas, né?
Sim. A gente está trabalhando com visões de sociedade, na verdade. Então, para mim, sempre foi muito importante que as pessoas percebessem que ensinar uma língua não é ensinar a língua só. Junto com a língua tem um projeto colonizador ou misto também, né? Que sempre alguma colonialidade vem junto, né? No aprender a ler e escrever é um projeto colonial importante. Nós todos nos beneficiamos dele, né? Não vamos jogar fora, né? Agora, vamos entender isso criticamente. Tipo assim, espera aí, olha aí. Durante muito tempo eu fui uma bem jovem, que acreditava no sim ou no não, no binarismo, achava que estava certo, está errado. Fui aquela aluna chata que gostava de tirar nota boa, porque eu queria reconhecimento, eu acreditava nisso, entende? Queria só nota boa, sabe, assim, que ficava, no fundo, me competindo com os outros, porque assim o professor vai lembrar de mim, que nem eu lembro da Cláudia também, uma das nossas brilhantes doutorandas lá da USP. Então, ainda é doutoranda, né, Cláudia? Não vou. Então, não está defendido, né? Porque senão estou diminuindo, né, o seu posto. Então, essas coisas são muito importantes, né? Deu entender, tipo assim, não, Walkyria, você não é um patinho feio. Você também é um cisne, entende? Porque tinha essa coisa, né, de ser patinho feio ou não, né? Meio assim. Yes, but... O que mais vocês ficaram pensando? Comentários?
Hello, everyone. Samuel Lima, from Instituto Federal do Rio Grande do Norte. And it's really a pleasure to be here, to be listening to you. And while I was listening to Professor Walkyria, I took many notes, of course, but I'm going to focus in a single one. And it's this moment when Professor told us that English teachers need to understand that teaching foreign languages is a special place for us to understand the others, right? And as I base my work on Bakhtin Circle, sure, I could never forget to add and to understand, and not only understand, but constitute ourselves. And based on this specific emphasis, eu gostaria de trazer uma problemática, né? É uma reflexão que eu tenho feito, né, junto com os meus pares, que é desafiadora, né? E eu trago aqui em forma de pergunta, né, para a gente refletir, e posteriormente, ou agora, né, justamente formas concretas, né, que encontremos formas concretas de pensar sobre isso, se isso for importante. Que é justamente para quem o meu estudante, do ensino médio integrado ao técnico, para quem ele fala, para quem ele escreve. Quando e se ele rompe a barreira de falar e escrever para o seu próprio professor. E para os seus próprios pares, ali no contexto ensino-aprendizagem. Né? Então, a gente tem visto o potencial das tecnologias digitais para fazer com que esses estudantes eles possam interagir com outros sujeitos de uma realidade menos imediata, mas de que forma eles estão interagindo? Né? E aí é essa pergunta que eu deixo, né? Como fazer isso? O teletandem funciona na aula, na carga horária do ensino médio, da sala de aula deste professor, ou ele vai realmente só funcionar quando isso se transformar em um projeto para além da sala de aula? Né? Então, eu trago aqui esse desafio, essa reflexão. Thank you again.
Okay, thank you, Samuel. But it's not only to me, it's to everyone, right? Okay. What do you think? Então, acho assim, na minha experiência, should I speak in Portuguese or English or translanguage, it doesn't matter, right? Okay, according to my experience, I've always had in mind that I was an educator that taught English. That through the teaching of English, for example, I wanted my students to open up their minds in relation to lots of issues. For example, English, I could teach English, Portuguese, Spanish, it doesn't matter, but I would be adding something, okay, in my classes. So I used to create completely different classes to students. I would follow the books, because we usually had books to follow, right? And I don't mean in institutes of languages, I mean even in elementary, secondary, and university spaces, right? We usually had classes, so I would teach that and make use of that thing, creating something else with the students. So I had to think and create and create and create and create. I had my own material together with a book usually, and to each group, right? So many things. Some, you know, it all depended on the. Is this what you want me to say? I mean, my experience in certain disciplines that I had. I was lucky that I have always been in teaching foreign languages. I mean, one foreign language. In making students learn how to read and write. Okay, so for me is, let's see how this student is going to learn how to read and write. And in terms of reading, I was in charge of a discipline called leitura extensiva. I'm not sure that universities have this kind of discipline anymore, but I had to teach it, right? So what was that? Instead of teaching books by authors, I was in charge of teaching short stories, right? So my students, as I was the same professor by the time for reading and writing, so students would read and write with me always. So, for example, they would recreate stories, even if it was just one paragraph. See, I would choose stories that would give me this chance, right? For example, many that I have published already, you should read my publications, right? Because they are all published. I mean, these experiences have been published. For example, one is the story of a couple that would travel, and they would travel for 15 days, right? However, the story ends when it's the 13th day of their trip, right? So the students had to imagine the 2 days that are not shown by the author. What do you think happened here? One paragraph for me. Because I was making them create things, and they would share the continuation of stories, for example, and the people would see that it all depends on who reads and who creates the continuations. You see, as many stories are built up in a way for me to think that there is a beginning, a middle, and an end. But that's a hypothetical end, right? So they can think of something else. I can change endings, right? That's how they become authors. That's how they develop their agencies. You see, this is for me much more important than reading only and discussing only the story. But it is interacting with the text. See, for example, I had lots of examples like this one and many others. When now, more recently, students were learning narratives, okay, at USP with me. I was in charge of teaching them about narratives, and I decided to include then digital narratives because they were studying narratives according to Ricard, according to Latour, according to, depending on some authors, and I said, hey, wait a minute, how do we create a digital narrative, a collective digital narrative? So I had a wonderful, result with the students, and I've published one of them, right? So you can follow that. So how they, even the image, right, that they produced with the kind of software they made use of. So everything is there. Então, é isso. É eu bolar que eu não preciso ser burocrática. Eu posso pensar em alguma outra coisa, não é? Enfim, eu tenho experiências variadas. Enfim, acho que eu não vou... Senão eu vou ficar aqui até as 4 horas, emendando, né? Então. Okay, sorry. But you have access to my publications, okay? Acho que elas estão todas online hoje em dia, não tem nada meu que esteja escondido. Okay.
Okay, we still have time for one more question. Or
comment,
commentary.
Or comment or protest,
whatever.
Complaint as well.
Okay, just a minute. Oh, or you can either come here, but you have to speak on the mic because there's people watching, and then they can see you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ricardo. I come from Instituto Federal do Sertão Pernambucano. Okay. So I have one question. I guess it's a simple one. I don't know. So it's how to battle this critical literacy, and also when we have to give focus on content. For example, during the pandemic, we saw that we gave some emphasis sometimes on content, according to your research. And sometimes in classroom, we have to work with critical literacy, but sometimes the students don't master the code, the language itself. So how do we battle that? How do we deal with that? Working with critical literacy, but also sometimes the lack of the language, the knowledge of the language.
Essa eu vou responder em português, tá? Porque eu vou ter que contar um caso. Assim, quem me ensinou o que eu tinha que fazer foram os meus alunos, sabe? Então, e aí eu vou voltar lá, numa época, década de 80, que eu estava fazendo uma pesquisa junto com um grupo, tá? Nós tínhamos um grupo que pesquisava metodologias novas, ideias novas, e aí a gente conseguia ir para uma escola testar. Então, eu fazia parte do grupo que estudava, discutia, planejava algumas aulas diferentes. E nós estávamos, na época, trabalhando com abordagem comunicativa, quando a abordagem comunicativa começou. Bem, e aí eu fui para a Zona Leste, que Zona Leste em São Paulo é uma mais disadvantaged região. Não, misturei português e inglês agora. É uma região de vulnerabilidade. Obrigada. Então, e aí a professora trabalhava junto comigo e ela me deixava dar algumas aulas para testar o plano que eu fazia de estudo junto com o grupo, não é? E naquele tempo nós estávamos aprendendo a trabalhar com a realidade do aluno. E eu fui escolhida para ir para a sala de aula, testar o que a gente estudava, pela experiência que eu tinha. Eu tinha sido professora de 5ª, 6ª, 7ª, 8ª série, ensino médio e cursinho, sabe, jovem que queria trabalhar e se sustentar, essas coisas, então, que vocês conhecem bem. Então, eu tinha uma boa experiência de sala de aula. Então, eu fui testar com os alunos, assim, metida, achando que eu conhecia a realidade dos alunos, entendeu? Porque eu já tinha tido muita experiência. Aí, cheguei lá e falei para os alunos assim, bem, hoje nós vamos aprender uma coisa nova. Então, aí que eu vou te falar como é que eu fazia com o aluno. Eu ensinava e nem pensava naquela ordem que a gente costumava seguir, que era assim, primeiro vamos aprender be, to be, do, das, ing, tarará. Nem lembrava disso, tá? A gente bolava coisas que não tinha sequência, parecida com aquela que a gente tinha antes, né? Afinal de contas, era pesquisa, né? Então, eu chegava para os alunos, era aluno, naquele ano, a 7ª série, começava a aprender inglês na 7ª série, lá. Eu falei para os alunos, vamos falar hoje das coisas que vocês, das profissões das famílias, vamos falar? E eu tinha me preparado. Aí, cheguei para o aluno e falou, geralmente era assim, quem quer contar o que alguém faz? Aí, se alguém fala assim, minha tia é professora, eu falei, então vamos falar isso. Você vai falar, my aunt is a teacher. E aí ele falava aquela frase. E falava. E eu ficava admirada. Falei, como ele fala, nem aprendeu to be, entende? Mas, para mim, na época, isso era uma super surpresa. Como eu ensino? Ensinando. Eu digo para ele como é que fala aquela coisa. Como é que ele vai comentar? Como é que eu digo isso? Né? E daqui a pouco eu te dou mais um adendo a isso. Mas aí eu falava isso com eles, assim, só que, nessa turma, eu falei assim, vamos falar das que as pessoas fazem na sua família, e um virou e falou, eu, professor, meu pai é auxiliar de almoxarifado. Entendeu? Onde que eu me meti? Aí, um virou e falou assim, meu irmão é escriturário. Graças a Deus tinha um motorista de caminhão, para eu ficar feliz, entendeu? Que aí eu sabia. Porque as profissões não eram aquelas profissões que eu encontrava nos livros, entende? E eu saí de lá, foi a pior aula que eu dei na vida, porque eu vi que eu não sabia inglês. E que pior, que eu não sabia a realidade dos alunos. Que eu já tinha sido professora de escola pública, de periferia, e tinha dado aulas de profissão, falando assim, então faz de conta que a sua irmã é enfermeira. Você fala assim, my sister is a nurse. Eu ensinava aquelas, que não era de ninguém, entendeu? Quando eu voltei para a realidade do aluno, eu vi que o inglês que eu sabia não dava conta, entende? A não ser que eu impusesse para o aluno. Se eu quisesse falar da realidade do aluno, eu tinha que estudar, porque eu não sabia. E isso piorou, porque muitas outras aulas... Piorou, foi ótimo, sabe? A aula de o que você fez semana passada, também, que a menina falou, eu preguei botão nas minhas roupas. Eu falei, mas isso a gente não faz em inglês, não. Ninguém prega botão, não é? Porque nos livros não tem nada disso. Vocês já aprenderam isso alguma vez num livro? Então, se é para falar da realidade deles, eu voltava sempre assim, gente, não sei, e a maioria também não sabia. A gente ia pesquisar como é que falava, aprendi depois, to stitch button, ok? Que é pregar botão. Aprendi depois. Mas, enfim, eles me ensinaram, primeiro, que eu não conhecia a realidade. Segundo, que eu, na verdade, estava pensando uma coisa de língua que não era nada a ver, né? Enfim, tive que remodelar tudo, entende? Daí é que a gente vai ganhando experiência. Mas aí que eu falo. Eu estou agora com uma orientanda que já vai defender, mais ou menos lá para fevereiro, março, que ela também trabalha numa escola pública, e ela está usando translanguaging com os alunos. E como ela usa translanguaging, ela aproveita e ensina para o aluno. O aluno fala, professor, eu quero falar, por exemplo, vamos falar assistiu o jogo, achou o quê? Achei que, como é que fala, uma gíria qualquer, e aí achei que foi o quê? Demais, algumas coisas assim, e aí ela vai ensinar para ele como é que vai falar aquilo, sabe? Vai pesquisar, vai falar. Então, é ensinando como falar, sem pensar naquela sequência, entende? Porque o que nos atrapalha muitas vezes é essa sequência linguística que a gente aprendeu que existe. Alguém disse que ela existe, a gente acreditou, né? Mas nós mesmos, quando aprendemos a falar nossa língua, nós não seguimos nada disso, né? A gente sabe que isso é uma falácia, né? Respondo ou não respondo? Mais ou menos, né? O resto a gente cria, entendeu? Ricardo, né, Ricardo? Uhum. É isso.
It was such a pleasure to hear you. I'm so happy. We can keep on talking, but now it's lunchtime, so I would like to thank you so very much.
I have an oficina this afternoon. Okay,
well
people?
said, well said.
Marketing.
She'll have a workshop after that. Can you tell us a little bit about it? It's on the program. If you open you can check. The room is there. And don't forget, when you apply for the event, you can choose the workshop. Of course, there won't be vacancies for all of them. There won't be seats for all of them. But it's like, I guess there are 12 seats for each one. Okay, so the first 12 people, I might use some translanguage in here. Os primeiros, 11º, né? A gente vai ali pelo horário do form, aí vão classificar. E por isso que a gente pediu, tem essa informação lá. As far as I can remember, I wrote it there. Que aí a gente vai processar por horário, se tiver mais gente, né? Aí, mas em princípio, por isso que vocês escolhem 2 oficinas. I'm sorry to interrupt, but since you talk about the workshops, então, pessoal, a escolha das 2 oficinas não quer dizer que seja num dia uma oficina e no outro dia, mas caso não tenha vaga suficiente, aí vocês serão, I don't know how to say that, remanejados. Thank you. Vocês serão remanejados para outra oficina. Okay, so I'd like to thank you very much. And we have something for you here. And we have some delicacies from Goiânia as well. So you're going to have a little taste of Goiânia food. Okay, thank you very much.
We don't see them so often anymore, right? Thank you. Thank you very much for your attention, for the consideration of attending my talk also. Eu vou falar sobre um pouco de cidadania e agência. Por quê? Porque todo mundo... Ai, Walkyria, essa mania de generalização que você tem dos seus velhos tempos. Vamos relativizar. Hoje em dia, a BNCC fala muito a respeito de cidadania, tá? E eu vejo que ali não tem uma explicação de cidadania. E cidadania é um conceito que, dependendo de como você... Se você não define, ele serve para tudo, né? Então, é isso, serve para qualquer lado, atende qualquer agenda, né? Então, nessas ideias, voltando no conceito de educação crítica, letramento crítico e tudo, eu gostaria de trabalhar a ideia de cidadania e de agência com vocês, né? Já pensando em várias... Esse é um ponto que eu tenho trabalhado muito ultimamente. Orientei já a Denise Landim, que agora era da Federal de Tocantins e agora ela está na Federal de São João del Rei. Enfim, estou contando porque vocês têm já trabalhos que vocês podem procurar, são todos disponíveis no banco de tese da USP, tudo disponível, podem pegar e ler, baixar e ler o quanto vocês quiserem. Então, já tenho muita pesquisa também realizada nesses conceitos. Tá bom? Além do que eu escrevo também, lógico. Tá bom? Então, tá. Se vocês quiserem vir assistir, não percam, ok? Thank you.
Thank you.
Estou desacostumada com o microfone, né?
Pessoal, só lembrando... I'm so sorry. Só lembrando que nós retornamos às 1:50, tá ok? Então, aí vocês estão livres para almoçar e cheguem aqui um pouquinho antes. A palestra vai ser transmitida ao vivo, mas não vai ser presencial, tá ok? Mas a gente vai... Isso, vai ser aqui sim.
Vou pedir